So this lecture is about the writing process. A lot of times students think that they have to write the draft perfectly the first time and then they just look at the blank page and they stop because they can't think of the right thing to start with, or they don't have the right opening, or they just don't know what to write. And really the key to the writing process is just being willing to write and just to go forward. And so in that process, it's going to require that you redo what you have. That is the writing process. You write a draft, you write all over the draft, you make changes, then you rewrite it. And then it's all fresh and shiny until you look at it and make changes. And you just keep doing that until you're happy with the paper you have, or it's due, whichever one comes first. All right, but to help you with some of that process, there are some steps, there are some techniques that can help you with the writing process. All right, and the first one is brainstorming or pre-writing. They're sort of used interchangeably. And all it is really just getting a lot of ideas down on the page. The hardest thing often about writing is getting the ideas that are sort of jumbled up on in your head on the page. And then more than that, especially if you're starting and you're like, I don't even know what to think, then pre-writing can help you sort of get those juices flowing. And so some of the common pre-writing techniques can be free writing or listing or clustering, which is also called webbing, looping, timeline, Venn diagram, outline. You may have seen some or all of these before, and these are all really time-tested strategies used to help you get ideas on the page. Once you get all those ideas down using a variety of pre-writing techniques, then you can start your first draft. All right, and your first draft is just the first getting your ideas down in some semblance of an order. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it shouldn't be perfect. And again, sometimes students really just get stuck there. So here are some strategies, some suggestions to help you overcome your writing anxiety. The first thing is stop being a perfectionist. Just let yourself off the hook. It's okay to have a first draft that sucks. All right. Another strategy to try is using your text-to-talk technology. On your phone, you have the ability. Most phones now have the ability to talk and use the microphone and get all the words down, and then from there you can copy that into an MS Word app or a variety of other apps to help you just sort of talk it through. A lot of the times if a student has difficulty writing, a student might have less difficulty talking it through, and that's a good way of getting it out of your head and onto the page. All right. Another thing you could try would be to start with the middle, like you know what you want to say, but you don't know what to say in your introduction, you don't know what to say in your conclusion, so skip it. Start in the middle. Get sort of the main gist of what you want to write down, and then come back and then do your introduction, then do your conclusion. All right, a last strategy that helps the first draft, sometimes just like there are people who really need to talk it out, some people really need to handwrite their draft. And there's actually some research that shows the act of handwriting helps spur some of the creativity in your brain. And so don't be afraid to try handwriting your draft if you're staring there looking at your computer going, I don't know what to write. Then try writing something. It's okay to have a first draft that is handwritten. Once you've got a draft, no matter how crappy it is, one of the first things you're going to need to do is get some feedback. All right, because feedback allows you to see your paper sort of through a stranger's eyes. All right, sometimes it's really obvious to you what you're meaning, but that doesn't necessarily translate on the page for somebody else. All right, and so you want to find people who can give you some good constructive feedback. Now, that being said, as a writer, sometimes you're going to get good feedback, sometimes you're going to get not good feedback. You have to be willing to accept it. Sometimes I hear students are like, well, you're not the teacher, so why should I have to listen to you? All right. Yes, I'm going to ask you as a teacher to do peer feedback, but my feedback isn't always going to necessarily hit all points, all right, which is why I have you guys work together. And the idea to get multiple points of feedback to help you figure out what works, what doesn't. All right. Now, sometimes you're going to get feedback, and one person's going to say, do blah, 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 and the other person's going to say exactly the opposite of whatever blah, blah, blah was. All right. In that case, you get to decide what you want. It's a wash. All right. Ultimately, though, as you write, this is always your opinion, your authority on the page. You have agency. You have the ability to make changes. All right, and so those changes are in the next draft. All right, so you get feedback, and then you rewrite. All right, and you can have one draft, you can have many drafts, you can have 50 drafts. As you go through, though, you should notice that you're focusing a little bit more narrowly as you go. So at the beginning, between like the first draft and the second draft, you might be making really big changes, like making changes in your organization, making changes to your details, you're adding more research, you're taking out information, that kind of thing. And then next thing you'll be looking at should be like transitions, like how do your ideas relate between paragraphs, how do your ideas relate between sentences. All right, and then as you go through again, you might look at word choice and phrasing. Word choice is a really important thing. Having really active nouns and verbs and specific and concrete description really can help make your writing come to life. But it's not something you want to focus on before you do the big things. All right, now, when you are drafting, be willing to kill trees. All right, a lot of the time it really you can draft on the computer, but there's something completely just viscerally satisfying in printing it out and getting out your red pen and crossing things out and putting arrows someplace else and moving things around and helping you see sort of where things should be different and then retyping it. All right, don't worry about killing trees. Go find some tree planting. Go to the conservation agency or something and plant a tree if you're feeling super guilty about this. All right, once you get done with all the drafting and all the big picture-y type of things, then you're going to work on your editing and your proofreading. Now, sometimes students are like, I want to make all my errors fixed in my first draft, and you can do that, and then you're going to be doing it again. I don't know a lot of students with a lot of extra time. I don't know a lot of students who are sitting around going, gosh, I've got like 3 hours. I think I'll waste it working on my paper and using steps that I don't need to do. Generally, this should be the almost done section of the writing process. All right, that way you're not focusing on tiny things like comma splices when you really should be working on, did I meet the assignment? Because that's sort of a bigger piece. All right, when you're doing editing and proofreading, you want to be looking at word choice and you want to be looking at wordiness. All right, and Stephen King says the first draft minus 10% equals the final draft. Whether or not you accept that is up to you, but it's a good rule of thumb. All right, proofreading is about correctness. This is GUMP. This is grammar, usage, mechanics, punctuation. This is checking your run-ons, your spelling, your making sure that all your commas are in the correct place. All right, and once you've done that a 3 times, and it does take multiple passes, you can get a lot of the big stuff out of the way with editing and proofreading, but I will encourage you, just like drafting, to go through several times. And then finally what you have is your final draft. This is the completed, polished, best version of your writing. All right, and I encourage you as you're going through to start with your pre-writing and hold on to every draft. All right, so that by the end you can really see the process and you can see how much change has gone between when you started and when you finished. The advantage of it is you get the satisfaction of seeing how much better your writing is at the end because of all your hard work.